Alright guys, what is up? Welcome back to Comic Books vs. the World, and today I'm going to be reviewing Power Rangers. I just saw it last night and I felt like I was reliving my childhood. I mean, I grew up with the mighty Morphin era of Power Rangers on TV, so this movie was really nostalgic for me. And it didn't exactly hurt that I saw the movie in that type of theater, you know what I mean? Like when everybody in the theater cheers and claps and stuff when things happen. Yeah, that kind of theater. There was even a guy sitting behind me that had the Ranger communicator noise on his phone. I guess he said it when he got a text or something because it went off before the movie started and everybody was just like, hey! But for real, it was a fun time. Anyways, enough with my personal experiences with the theater crowd. Let's get into this review. Keep in mind, this review is 110% going to be a non-spoiler review, although I may get into a little bit of detail now and then just so you understand what I'm talking about. If you're looking for Power Rangers spoilers though, then you should probably check out my other video when I break down all the leaked out detail and all the spoilers for the new movie. You can check it out by clicking either the link here on screen or in the description down below. So I'm not gonna lie, when the first trailer dropped for this thing way back when, I thought the movie was gonna be terrible, just flat out horrible. It just looked like it was going to try way too hard to not be the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers show. Like how that show was very cheesy and over the top, the first trailer gave off the impression that this movie was going to take itself way too seriously and just be all dark and depressing. Thankfully, it was nothing like that. Yeah, there was some angst in there, you know, a little bit of teenage drama and all that, but it felt realistic. I mean, there was bullying, some petty girl drama stuff, you know, stuff you would expect teenagers to deal with. And a big part of how that came off so realistically was the way the actors handled all their parts. Like the characters all had their different kind of issues they were dealing with, and it all felt very organic, especially during this one scene when they're all sitting around and they're all talking to each other and they bring up all these issues. These actors really make you feel for these kids, especially the ones that play Trini and Billy. Honestly, Billy might be your favorite Ranger when you come out of that theater. I mean, he's fun, he's upbeat, and he feels like the emotional glue bringing these people together because he just wants to be everybody's friend. And I say that because there's a moment when Billy does something the rest of the kids can't at that time, and it's because he's the first one to really connect with everybody. And I gotta say, I really liked how the movie handled Trini being gay and Billy being autistic. That's not a spoiler, by the way. Both of those things were covered by a ton of different news sites. But seriously, when I first started hearing this was going to be a thing, I was a little bit hesitant. Not because I don't think there needs to be more diversity on film, but because a lot of movies either tend to advertise the fact that there's a gay or autistic character, or because everybody in the movie ends up turning it into this huge issue. It's really refreshing to see a movie where it's just handled matter-of-factly. You know what I mean? Like it's stated, it's normalized, everybody just accepts it, and they move on. It's really great. The other characters are handled pretty well too, like Zordon, Alpha, Rita. Probably better than the 1990 show actually, depending on your taste. Rita wasn't screeching or yelling about a headache every 5 seconds. Yeah, Elizabeth Banks has a little bit of an accent going on, and she does ham it up a little bit, but it actually works, you know? I don't know what everybody else is complaining about. I thought she fit well within that gray area of serious and silly. Yeah, she had some jokey moments, but if she was gonna destroy something, she did it. If she was gonna kill somebody, she did it. I really hope Elizabeth Banks changes her mind and decides to come back for Power Rangers 2, because I thought she was an awesome, threatening villain. Even Alpha was kind of cool. He wasn't like flailing his arms around or whining about something. He actually helped Zordon do stuff. And speaking of Zordon, he was kind of cool too. I mean, I wish we got to see more of him, but he was pretty much like how he was in the original show. You know, he's very exposition-y, but I will say his character actually had some depth. Like in the show, he was always just very kind and generous, and he was giving out advice and stuff to the Rangers, but in this one, he's nothing like that. Yeah, he's still kind and even does this thing towards the end of the movie when he helps the Rangers out with a super serious problem, but in the beginning, he starts off as a bit of a grouch, and it's actually kind of interesting to see it play out. A lot of the action was awesome. It felt like watching the old show, but you know, if the show had a bigger budget and modern effects. You had giant robots smashing stuff, Power Rangers doing flips and kicks and doing their one-liners while they did it, giant monsters smashing stuff, giant robots punching giant monsters. It was absolutely fantastic. I wish we got a little bit more of the martial arts sequences because the actual Power Ranger stuff was pretty much just left in the third act, but still, what we got was still really cool. And speaking of monsters and robots, the special effects and the design choices in this movie were actually pretty good for the most part. I mean, you probably remember everybody giving this movie a hard time when they first started releasing stills from the set and the concept art. I mean, even I jumped in and kind of ripped on Alpha's design when I first saw it, but actually seeing it on screen moving around, it works. The characters stand out more, they were more dynamic, Alpha could actually move a little bit more organically, and Zordon wasn't just a head in a tube. I liked how his head would actually swoosh around on the wall, like he'd move so he could always be facing who he's talking to. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to rip on the original show here, I still like it, but I like how this movie definitely updated the designs in a way that made it feel fresh, but also nostalgic at the same time. There are some exceptions to that, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Speaking of nostalgia, there was a good bit of throwbacks in this movie too. This is probably going to be a spoiler, but I can't help it, I gotta bring it up. The original theme song is in this movie. It's in there for a minute, but still, it's easily part of one of the best scenes in the entire movie, especially if you're a fan of the original Power Rangers show. And there's a few classic lines getting thrown into the mix too, like you might hear some classic lines from Rita, you might hear somebody say, "It's Morphin time," and if you've been watching the clips and stuff that Lionsgate released earlier, you probably already heard Alpha going, "Ay, ay, ay." These were really fun, and they didn't feel like they were just jammed in there just to have them in there, you know what I mean? There's also a couple of cameos. You should already be aware of them if you saw my last Power Rangers video, or if you've been keeping up with the online news about this stuff, but I'm not going to mention specifically who's making the cameos just because I don't want to ruin the surprise for anybody that wants to go in blind. Let me just say this though, before I saw the movie, I was under the impression that these two cameos were really hard to spot. Like maybe there were going to be a couple of people running for their lives way in the background or something like that. Nope, these two were sitting right there in front of the camera for a good while. If you were a fan of the OG Mighty Morphin series, you'll definitely recognize these two right away. More casual fans or newcomers might have to be reminded who they are, but the point is you'll definitely see them. There's even a super awesome mid-credit scene, so you definitely have to stick around for that. I don't want to come out and tell you exactly what it was, but let me just say it blew my mind and got me so freaking excited for the sequel. All I can tell you without giving it away is that it references another character from the original show, and it even makes his backpack a color-coded hint, so pretty much everybody should know who this is when they say his name out loud in the movie. Seriously, stick around after the movie and watch it. It is amazing. No joke, it actually got the crowd at my theater full on cheering. Like everybody was standing up and applauding and stuff like that. Alright, so we talked about the good, now we gotta talk about the bad. I know a lot of this is probably gonna come off as nitpicky, but I don't really care. All of this really stood out to me when I was watching this movie. I think the biggest problem with the movie is its tone and pacing, especially in the second act of the movie. Like the first act and the third act were solid. I mean, we got to know the characters and spend some time with them, and we even got to see them do some awesome Power Rangers stuff, but the second act was all over the place. I mean, we get a montage for the training sequence and for them being friends. I mean, come on. Their feelings tend to jump around a little bit too for seemingly no apparent reason. Actually, a couple things in the second act just sort of feel like they happened. I don't want to get too specific, but it felt like a good chunk of this movie got left on the cutting room floor. Like some of the stuff you saw in the trailer didn't really show up in the movie, like the karate on the train scene or Zach jumping around outside that house. Probably the biggest thing I noticed missing was the Kimberly and Jason kiss. Like where'd all that go? Hopefully we get a full like extended edition or something like that when the movie comes out on DVD and Blu-ray, because it might help flesh out the second act a little bit, and it might help bring it back up to that level the rest of the movie set up, you know what I mean? There was also a couple of times my suspension of disbelief just had to work overtime to help me get through a scene. I know it's Power Rangers, real life doesn't exactly apply here, but there were times when things that should have resulted in a character's death, or at least a very serious physical injury, didn't happen like that. I don't just mean like a putty punching them or something, I mean stuff like explosions or falling objects or something like that, and this is all happening outside of their armor, by the way. Apparently nothing except getting punched by monsters hurts these kids. It's absolutely insane. And on top of that, I got to a point where I just wanted to throttle one of these people because of how stupid they got at one point. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see the movie, but let me just give you a general idea of what's happening here. So there's a part in this movie when the Rangers are trying to save somebody, and all they end up really doing is just standing around this person, yell at them, and they check their pulse a couple times. Seriously? Come on. I know that people freeze up sometimes, but nobody tries anything to save this person? Are you serious? And then there's the product placement. You know how movies drop in some companies' products, like whoever's sponsoring the movie gets to have their brand on screen for a bit? Well, you might have a hard time figuring this out, but Krispy Kreme actually sponsored this movie. It's crazy, right? But seriously though, part of this movie pretty much turned into a Krispy Kreme commercial. Don't get me wrong, I get sponsorships, I get that Krispy Kreme had to get their name thrown in there somehow. I just didn't like how they did it. Like the movie actually grinds to a halt for a little bit towards the end just so we can see somebody eat some Krispy Kreme. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they ended up taking that scene and they just slapped it on TV as an ad for the donuts. Like it's that level of just blatant advertising. I remember how I said earlier the designs in this movie were cool, but they had some issues? Well, Goldar and the putties were those issues. Seriously, the putties were just so boring to look at. I mean, they were just piles of rock, and I know the old show didn't exactly do anything better, but still, I thought this was gonna be so much better. Just looking at them as they were, I was just like, I wish they had a little bit more color or shape or something to them. As for Goldar, I don't mind how he looks too much. I kind of warmed up to the design after it was revealed, I think in a toy commercial or something, but it still bothers me that he doesn't have a face. I wanted to hear him talk and stuff, but he ended up just being this generic giant monster, and that was a little bit disappointing for me. But all that having been said, Power Rangers is definitely a fun movie. It's got action, romance, some teenage drama, and a lot of fun moments. I'm gonna give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. There were a couple things the filmmakers probably should have done differently, but on the whole, it was was super enjoyable and I really liked it. Alright guys, that's my review for the new Lionsgate movie Power Rangers. I highly recommend you go check out this movie right now, like right away. Seriously, it was so much fun. Now, if you agreed with anything I've said in this video, or even if you didn't, or if you're curious about anything, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to click that like button, maybe leave me a comment while you're at it, and go ahead and click that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to check out any of my social media pages. I've got a Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. All those links are going to be in the description below. And I've also got my last video right there in the middle of your screen, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and click it, check it out. Alright, and I will see you all next time.